My name is Steve, and I love Dragon Age Origins, and it's almost unfair to any other game I'll ever play because I don't think there's a possible way that another game could replace it for me. For example, there are a few other games that could have been my favorite, like Persona 5, The Witcher 3, Baldur's Gate 2. You'll notice from this list that I'm a big fan of RPGs. If I had played these games during the same point in my life that I had played Dragon Age, I'd probably feel the same way about them. So I'll set up my frame of mind and personal situation for when I initially played Dragon Age. I was 14. I hated school. I had no friends. I was surprisingly not as depressed as I should have been, but still not very happy. I was trapped in this position that I hated for the next 3 years with no escape. But there was an escape, and that escape was video games. And I'm sure that my situation isn't that uncommon for a lot of people who are obsessed with video games for a period in their life. And look, I know it isn't a quote unquote healthy way to deal with your problems, but it fucking helped. Like, it really helped me by just giving me some enjoyment in an otherwise unenjoyable time. My parents bought me Dragon Age as a Christmas gift. I played it for about an hour that day, and then I thought to myself, this game's boring, and then I just let it sit on my shelf for the next 3 months untouched. The only reason I gave it another shot is because my dad and I were watching some video game award show, and Dragon Age had won a bunch of awards, and my dad said, hey, don't you own that game? And I said, yeah, I do. So I decided to try playing it again after that. This time I beat the game in about 3 days, skipping school in order to do so. The game takes about 50 hours to beat. And then after beating it, I instantly started another playthrough and beat it again in another 3 days. And it was the most enjoyable gaming experience of my life. And I've been chasing that high ever since. Sitting here, I'm actually having a hard time putting into words why I love Dragon Age Origins so much, because it's a combination of so many different factors. For one, it was my situation in life at the time. Another is that I was just starting to mature, and this was my first dark fantasy game that I had played since becoming old enough to enjoy stories like this. One of the major factors of my enjoyment, I think, was that I went into the game absolutely blind, not knowing a single thing about it, which is how I think is the best way to enjoy any piece of art, and I could never be this blind again. I didn't know anything about the game. I knew very little about RPGs in general. I didn't know about BioWare as a company. The only BioWare games I had played prior to this were the Knights of the Old Republic games when I was like 8 years old. And when you're 8, you don't associate games with developers. Also, I didn't get any of the characters or story and never beat the game. In fact, I've been meaning to go back and replay that game because I'm sure it's amazing. I'll give you an example of how blind I was going into Dragon Age. I didn't know that Wynne was a party member until my third playthrough because I always had Morrigan in my party whenever Wynne was introduced, and Morrigan throws a hissy fit if you side with Wynne, and because I wanted to romance Morrigan, I always sided with her and killed Wynne. Another factor in my enjoyment in the game is that I was socially retarded at the time. I'm not even joking. Like, if a girl said hi to me or touched me on the shoulder or hand, my face would go beet red and my mouth would dry up and I couldn't talk. I would just completely shut down. And to illustrate this, in the game, I was romancing Morrigan, and at a certain point in the game, you get the opportunity to ask Morrigan for a kiss. And when I was presented with that opportunity, I bitched out and didn't go for it. Like, it's a fucking video game. There aren't any consequences. Why did I bitch out? I don't know. I immediately regretted my decision though, and reloaded my last save, which was like 2 hours prior to that. So I had to play for 2 hours to catch back up to where I was, and then I went for the kiss with Morrigan, and when she kissed me, my face went beet red and my mouth dried up and I could barely talk. That's how socially retarded I was. I was getting the same feelings from this video game that I would from real life, so I could never recapture that kind of immersion while playing a game ever again. Dragon Age is my favorite game, not because it's the best game I've ever played. I can acknowledge the flaws it has, the biggest one being the combat. And it's not my favorite game because it's the game I put the most time into. That award goes to World of Warcraft, which I probably dumped about 5 years of my life into. And even though it was probably BioWare's last great game, and all the games they've released recently have been kind of terrible to mediocre, I'll always be grateful to them because they gave me an experience that filled me with so much discovery and awe at a time where I was pretty much dead to the world and just hanging out in Frowntown. To give an analogy, I had laser eye surgery done, and for those of you that haven't, it's a very traumatic experience where you have to lay back in a chair and keep perfectly still while they tape your eyes back like you're in Clockwork Orange, and you're awake the whole time, and there are these machines that are making horrible noises, and they shoot your eye with a laser, and you can smell your own eye burning. It's terrifying, but when I had my surgery done, there was this really cute Asian lady who was there, and she held my hand the whole time and just told me reassuring things like, "It's going to be okay, you're doing great, you're almost done." And it really helped calm me down. So in this analogy, Dragon Age was the cute Asian lady holding my hand, and laser eye surgery was my shit life at the time. Dragon Age Origins is a game that is irreplaceable to me, almost as if it's an old friend. If you have any stories that are similar to this, involving a game that helped you out in a tough period in your life, then leave me a comment and tell me about it, because I am genuinely interested. Okay, bye for now. I'm gonna try to release videos more often. We'll see how that works out.